What's going on, guys? This is Waylon Martin with Bodybuilding.News bringing you another weekly wrap-up. This week we're covering the Tampa Pro held in Florida, presented by Pro Bodybuilding Worldwide. This contest, being so close to the Olympia, is always competitive, with last-minute entrants trying to get their qualification to head over to Vegas. Though impressive all season long, Akim Williams brought it here to Tampa and finally sealed the deal, gaining himself an Olympia qualification, and is going to be making a trip most likely to Las Vegas in 6 weeks. This went with a lot of push, however, from second place runner-up Alexis Rivera. Alexis, the Puerto Rican, looked very impressive as well, and it was an apples and oranges type comparison. This is because while Akim brings a very unique look to stage, it's not always very complete in that sometimes it's a little lackluster in conditioning and whatnot. However, that was not the case this weekend. Rivera, on the other hand, brings a much more complete and total package together, but he looks much more like a typical standard bodybuilder. A great bodybuilder, but there's a lot of physiques that are more comparable to him. So while it may be apples and oranges between him and Akim, it's like there's a handful of apples and he's the best apple versus there's only one orange, which is Akim. A very distinct type of look that's not very common at these types of shows. And that's how come Akim gets these types of rewards. Even though Akim may lose a singular pose like a side chest due to lack of presentation, it's not due to lack of ability or muscle. And so you have to consider all facets when going into the judging. Does Akim win every single pose hands down? Obviously not. He was very closely contested. However, it was enough in total. He was the best bodybuilder at this show. So going into the Olympia, his odds are low, but he's not going to embarrass himself whatsoever. He just needs to bring a package similar to this. So there's very low stress and very high reward here at this weekend for Akim. This is a well-deserved win. He's been working at it a long time and consistently improving. If there's a big knock on Akim, it would just be his presentation in general, especially that side chest shot. In the side chest shot, even a guy like Clarence DeVise, who didn't even finish in the top 5, although he was originally in consideration, he makes Akim look normal. And so you shouldn't have a guy who's a former 212 guy making a guy with so much muscle such as Akim look in comparison even. They shouldn't even be a question there. However, in other shots, Akim is so dominant that it's lights out. And this finally, I believe, starts to elevate him into those Arnold type shows. He should be more competitive. He should get a serious look. And kind of like a Lionel Biecki type physique at this point. Not type physique, but in caliber and whatnot. A guy who can win these lower tier shows, and now he's going to be more competitive at, say, like an Arnold type event or one of the international Arnolds. Maybe the show in I believe it's Hong Kong. That would be a good show for him. Just something to consider, unless he wants to do something else instead of, or in addition to the Olympia. With Akim, it's little things of presentation, such as being upstage. For example, in the back double bicep, he's standing behind everyone else. So just in the perception of the eye, whoever's closer is going to look slightly bigger. And so he's a little bit further back, which makes his physique a little bit smaller. And then Akim's a naturally dark pigmented guy. So when you have the shadow of other competitors casted on you, it hides your physique even more so. So these little things, these little tads and tweaks are going to make a significant difference. But that's also a great sign for Akim, because it goes to show just how much potential he still has. If there's another concern or critique of his physique, it's his side shot, the hamstring. The hamstring doesn't have the hang that a lot of these guys do. He still has a ton of mass in side shots, a good amount of mass and whatnot, but that hamstring is just lacking a type of hang and again, bulbous type mass to it. However, in the rear shots, Akim had some of the tightest hamstrings at the show, and that might be for the very reason why he didn't have such great depth in the hamstring shots and the side ones. So in the back shots, it made him much more head to toe because his glutes were in, and then they tied into the hamstrings, which just looked great. Versus a guy like Alexis, maybe he wasn't holding the pose necessarily in the shot, but his back shots were significantly weaker than his front shots. Actually, I would have to argue that it's Alexis' back shots that lost him the show. This is because in his lat spread, for example, especially in the prejudging, which is the most important part, Alexis came in notably harder at the night show. I would have to attribute this to a water issue. And if he came in the morning looking like he did at the night with the striated quads and whatnot, he would be much more competitive, and he might have actually pushed Akim for that title spot entirely, maybe jumped him and surpassed him and received it. And I'm going to be interested to see him in a more competitive lineup, and as he learns his physique a little bit more, gets a little bit more mastery trajectory of it, because this guy's a professional now and he's clearly improving every contest. So I'm interested to see where this trajectory takes him. Conditioning is what brought these guys at the bottom of the top 5 into the contest. And so because this wasn't a particularly deep lineup here in Tampa, it was a quality lineup, but there wasn't a lot of big names. For example, we have Abdul, who comes in 3rd place, and he looked good. He looked really dialed in. Kind of reminds me of when Mo Benut won the Europa in 2014. He looked 100% on for his genetic set. And this is the same thing with Abdul, at least at this point in his physique. Maybe he can develop more muscle or a type of flow, whatever, but at this point it looked like he was really dialed in for what he could bring. And it just so happened these other guys showed up in front of him. I'm really interested to see how much more we're going to see going into the future, because if he's able to bring this type of conditioning consistently, he's going to consistently be in consideration, because at these tier of contests, these guys don't always come in the shape. And so when you do, it's an automatic consideration. And that brings us to 4th place, Roman Fritz, another guy who in the morning wasn't really in the mix of things, but his conditioning elevated him to these top spots. Roman doesn't have the mass yet of some of these top IFBB guys. However, at this tier of contest, with the conditioning he brought, it was enough to be in consideration at least. And I'm really excited for Roman, because he's been working at this a long time, and it's been cool to see his rise up the ranks. And the one thing in his control, absolute control, is conditioning, and he brought that. So you have to respect that. Though Roman is detailed and his physique has a lot of details and striations, whatnot, it lacks a level of detail that a guy like Rivera does have. So although Roman looks great, a guy like Rivera has the striated quads and whatnot. Roman has very separated quads because he lacks fat. It's just the striations and whatnot aren't exactly there yet. I think it's a little bit of just muscle maturity and time training. He doesn't have that fluff to his muscle. He doesn't have a certain level of just time. And I feel like Roman, if he's consistent with his off-season type training, is going to be very dangerous for years to come at this point, because the thing that he can control to now, conditioning, he has on point. And so if that's any indication going forward, he's just going to continue to improve, and he's able to bring this type of conditioning, which is going to make him a threat at this tier of contests all the time. 5th place, Jon Delarosa. This year has been kind of rough for Delarosa. Well, he's looked pretty good on average at most of the shows. It's definitely not the guy that we saw last year winning contests. He was frankly very lucky to end up in the 5th place position here. And though it was a deserved placing in that he did deserve to be in the mix for the spot, it was still a lucky one in that he could have easily slipped down to the 6th or possibly even the 7th place spot. I have to wonder if this is a temporary low that we're seeing from Delarosa or a new trend. This is because after last year, when he was pushing all of his competition, every contest he's entered, he's consistently fallen in this bottom of the top 5 type placing, which would be great for the majority of professional athletes. However, from a guy that we've seen such great conditioning and etc. from before, you have to wonder what's going on. So guys, that's everything from Tampa. This has been a very competitive contest, this time with Akim Williams getting the Olympia qualification. Thanks everybody. This is Waylon Martin with Bodybuilding.News. Out, out, out. Ow. Wow. And guys, if you like these reviews, we also have an Olympia review that I put out a couple days ago. So be sure to like and subscribe to our channel if you want more videos like this, and check that one out as well. If you do, it's a little bit longer and more extensive.